After my humiliating loss on the porch, I began to soften towards Miss Kitty. After all, she had faced her enemy with a smile and a flick of her tail. Her performance seemed to demand something from me. Was it respect or just a good laugh? Whatever it was, I found myself increasingly drawn to her. She continued to come and visit, ignoring my hints that she might be better off across the street. Meanwhile, Debbie, another neighbor of mine, who is a friend to all things furry and four-footed, offered to pay Miss Kitty's owner to have her spayed. Miss Kitty had a history of flirtatious behavior, and Debbie knew how hard it was to find homes for unwanted kittens. For some reason, after months of ignoring the kind proposal, the cat's owner finally decided to take Debbie up on her offer, declaring on a Wednesday that the following Monday was spay day. While that sounds like a wonderful idea, there was one problem. By the time the cat owner finally decided to spay Miss Kitty, she was pregnant and almost ready to deliver her kittens. Something inside me could not accept the new development in this strange little cat's life. I knew that everyone was trying to act in her best interest, but I was determined to derail this last-minute spaying. Admittedly, I didn't work at the Humane Society or see the rampant abuse of helpless animals, but Miss Kitty was so round and wobbly, I just couldn't allow anything to happen to her or her kittens. If I have to, I'll hide Miss Kitty in my garage. There's no way she's getting spayed before she has her babies, I said to myself in a moment of passion. I began to pray feverishly that the cat deliver her kittens over the weekend. That was on a Thursday, and there were only 3 days before decisive action would have to be taken. That evening, Miss Kitty came by to visit. My sister and I were sitting on the front porch, chatting about a big family party coming up that weekend. Miss Kitty was restless, moving between us, mewing and rubbing against the chair legs discontentedly. We talked to her a little, reaching down to stroke her soft black fur, and then running inside to wash our hands. After a while, she wandered off. I thought about her the next day, but was too busy with the party to worry much. Saturday afternoon, while setting up for the big event in my backyard, Miss Kitty jumped over my fence. This was something I'd never seen her do before. She approached us and began talking up a storm. "Look," my sister said, "Miss Kitty's had her babies." We leaned down at once and started patting her. And all the while, I was wondering, what was Miss Kitty doing in my backyard? Why had she climbed a fence to come say hello? And most puzzling of all, where were the babies? We both knelt down and talked to her, cooing like cat whisperers. And together, we decided to get Miss Kitty to lead us to her kittens. "Where are your babies? Show us where the kitties are," we pleaded, smiling sweetly. Miss Kitty looked at us sincerely, making short, mewling cries, and began to walk back and forth around the backyard. We followed her as if she were a treasure map and we the pirates. She wandered from bushes to trees and back again, while my sister and I followed behind, encouraging her every step of the way. We looked everywhere, but found nothing. No sign of the babies, and no sign that Miss Kitty was leading us on anything other than a wild goose chase. Finally, we gave up. At that point, I was sure Miss Kitty's babies had been born dead and were lying somewhere in the woods. Just in case she'd not lost the babies at all, but had simply lost her mothering instinct, we notified everyone we could think of to keep an eye and an ear out. The neighborhood was on watch. The rest of the weekend went by in a blur. The party was a combination family reunion and birthday celebration, and it was wonderful. The day after the party was spent cleaning up. Time flew by, and I didn't notice Miss Kitty again until that night. I was carrying the trash out through my garage to the bin outside when I noticed her. She was wandering around the yard and came up with her usual greeting. There was still no sign of the kittens, and I was sure at this point they were lost. Putting out a bowl of milk and some tuna for her, I reached down to pat her. She'd probably just had a grilled mahi-mahi dinner at her owner's place, but I was completely suckered at that point. As a mother myself, I could only imagine what she must be feeling. Later in the evening, as I was closing up for the night, I noticed 2 black cat ears sticking up from behind some old luggage and a discarded car cushion in the corner of the garage. She peeked up so I could see her beautiful dark eyes, and my heart melted. I guess she wandered in when the garage door was open that afternoon. So what if I was allergic to cats? Miss Kitty seemed to need a safe haven, so I let her stay in my garage that evening. Everyone needs a place to recover from the tragedies of life, right? The next morning, I called Miss Kitty out of the garage. I had to go to work. It was late September and still hot during the day, and I didn't want her sweltering in the heat while I was gone. I convinced her to come out with a fresh bowl of milk. Closing the garage door, I waved goodbye and left for the day. When I returned home that evening, Miss Kitty was lying on my driveway, swishing her tail. When I opened the garage, she ran inside, into her corner, and disappeared. Maybe she's depressed and wants to hide away from her miseries, I thought. Maybe I should take up a career in cat psychology. I was pretty sure that I understood her angst, and I was providing the best medicine for her recent loss. So that night, I left her food again and went to bed. On Tuesday, we went through the same ritual. Offering her fresh milk on the front porch, I once again closed the garage door and promptly went to work. On my way to work, I began to think I might be doing Miss Kitty a disservice. After all, there was no hope I could keep her. The garage was too hot in the summer and too cold in the winter for a cat, and I had to wash my hands every time I patted her. There was no way she could live in my house. Her real owner showed no interest in her, so I wasn't worried that she was missed. But I was realistic enough to know it wasn't fair to create an attachment I couldn't follow through on. My house just wasn't the right home for a cat, even one as loving and needy as Miss Kitty.